Hi, Jeff. Yes, and it's evening here. It's almost time for dinner.
Oh, me too. I'm having late dinner.
All
What's
right.
going on around the world, mate? What should we be focusing on for the coming week?
All right. It's interesting stuff, I think, last week. So I'm going to share my screen and we are going to talk a little bit about China. So in the headlines, we have the US sentiment beating forecast. I think the New Zealand inflation rate has popped down a tad, a kind of tiny bit. And I'm looking at a couple of interesting stuff that's happening over next week. So I think the currencies, the stronger currencies, I am looking at. I'm still on the bias of a long Swiss, but I think there's retracements in order because the Swiss, in terms of its data, has been pretty stable, has been pretty steady. But I think in the wake of the US inflation dropping down, I think there's a little bit more risk on sentiment, which means we might see money flow out of the Swiss as, some people find a little bit more confidence that the high interest rates in the US are working and inflation actually is moving. Whether or not it's a fluke, we'll have to see the next inflation reading. But I think what really interests me is the China numbers. So over here, you can see the China inflation actually rose 0.2. So being the 2% inflation rate and only going up 2.7, it actually is a good thing for China. Activities are coming up. So we can see in this little inflation rate right up here, what's interesting is we are looking at non-food inflation slow. All right, so prices are kind of stabilizing for non-food stuff. We have food prices increasing. We have costs increasing for transportation and communication. And, the question I think we all are thinking of is whether or not China is ready to recover. But, with a little bit of movement in China, whether or not it's an actual recovery, I guess we still have to be a bit patient to see. China is facing a bunch of debt issues, all right, across the world as everybody, the economies that are affected by the Belt and Rail projects, I guess they are kind of in trouble over there. But my concern is if China starts to activate, right, what I am looking for is to see whether there is any push for the Kiwi. All right. So why the Kiwi? The Kiwi's top trade in terms of the Kiwi. In terms of its top trading partners, you can see that New Zealand actually has 32.6% in terms of trading relationships with China. So if China starts to move up, I think it will help the Kiwi economy be bolstered as well. And when we look at the charts, all right, if we look at some of the Kiwi pairs, we can see a lot of strength has been coming into the Kiwi pairs over the last week. We have a bit of a pop of the Kiwi. All right, so I am looking at hopefully trading the continuation of this pop-ups. But of course, the currency pairs I'm trading it against will be the weaker currencies like the euro and the Japanese yen. All right, so the Japanese yen has had a nice retracement in terms of its currency pairs in the last 1.5 weeks. But what I am thinking, it is a kind of a retracement because the Bank of Japan has not said that it will be changing its policies at this point. So if the Bank of Japan has not changed its stance, it means that it is still pushing for a weaker yen. I think this pop in the Japanese yen is probably a retracement pop. And I am looking for re-entries into a continued short of the Japanese yen. As long as Japan doesn't change its stance, I will be short on the yen. The challenge now that because it is in an overextended region, it's about finding that entries we can go in. So next week, I'm looking at pairs like the Kiwi yen, the Euro Kiwi, I think the other currency that I'm a bit more comfortable trading towards the long side would be maybe the Swiss yen and Euro Swiss. All right. But again, these are very overextended currencies. All right. If you look at the Euro Swiss, you can see fundamentally, it kind of has a bit of leaks, but technically we are at a very overextended region. So you can see the Euro Swiss on the daily time frame, it is hitting the bottoms of this area. So I suspect that before price goes into continuation, it's going to go into a range for a while the market decides whether or not the euro is still worth shorting. All right, so I think these levels are going to be a turning point. because the moment these prices are broken, we are going to see a change in economic structure for the euro. Okay, the euro hasn't been doing well for a while, partly due to the conflict in Ukraine. It is affecting the economy in the region. All right, so this is at a very interesting place. I am very wary of long euros at this point. All right, because I think fundamentally the numbers still do not look as good. They still have the highest unemployment numbers comparatively in the region, as well as high inflation. So that can't be really good for the economy at this point. So I am looking continued shorts on the euro, but I think for these currencies that are overextended, we'll probably do well to be patient, to wait for the pullbacks before re-entering in those positions. All right. So Swiss yen finally did move in the last 2 weeks, and again it's reaching horizontal levels. So again, I probably would want to wait for a bit more pullbacks before continuing to trade pairs like this. And again, if we zoom out all the way, you can see these are very overextended pairs. So while the potential for longs from a fundamental point is there, I think the technical traders here will be hard pressed wanting to continue long. So I think it's going to be a bit more consolidation, a bit more decision making, a bit more clarity needed from the market before we continue on this long trajectory. Or at least from a technical standpoint, I would rather wait for a break and retest of maybe this levels, either this trend line or this horizontal levels before wanting to continue to long it. All right, so just be a bit patient on the entries over here so that we're not too premature. Alternatively, if price really does pull back to levels over here or levels over here, I would be happy to look for long re-entries in the Swiss yen. So that's all for me. I am looking for longs, the Swiss and the Kiwi, and shorts, the euro and the Japanese yen. That's all I have, Jeff.
Awesome, Mickey. Thank you very much indeed. Interesting that yen, it of course has been out of favour for a very, very long time, for reasons, of course, that are fairly obvious. Had a little bit of a rally there a couple of weeks ago, but gee, it hasn't lasted too long, has it? And I'll be interested to see if those can pop back through the highs there in the Swiss franc and others, as you mentioned. Thank you, mate. Have a great week ahead, and we look forward to catching up very, very soon. All right, let's